You're tuned in to RBLR, the home of Tampa Bay's Reveler Sports.
4 seconds left. In front. Happy moment. The Tampa Bay Lightning have won the first Stanley Cup. And the Tampa Bay Lightning have won the Stanley Cup. Lightning strikes twice. The Tampa Bay Lightning win their second straight Stanley Cup.
Welcome back to RBLR Lightning. Alongside me, I've got my line mates, Matt Gannon, Joe Samataro. Guys, welcome back to the show as we get set here once again to talk another week of Lightning hockey. Super excited to have you guys here. Joe, I'll start with you. How you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing a lot better today than I was going into Sunday night's game. That looked like it was going to be a rough week, but I'm very happy with the way this Monday is turning out.
Yeah, it was a little rough start there, but things definitely got better towards the end. And Matt, how about you?
It's been a shaky week, but I'm still vertical. I'm happy. I'm happy where we're at. I'm happy where I'm at. So it's always good to be back with you guys, get some stuff off my chest. Jake, how are you?
Well, I was doing good, Matt, and then I checked my fantasy score this morning and realized that you beat me. So, that kind of ruined my mood a little bit there. But
it was a close matchup, Jake. Your team's looking a lot better than the start.
It is looking a lot better. It's funny. I would have beat you too if I didn't leave some players on the bench, which I wasn't too happy about. But it happens. But we're not here to talk about fantasy. We're here to talk about some Lightning hockey, and of course, we've got a lot to jump into here as well. So let's get right into it. And the first thing I want to talk about is we have a little bit of news to go over here. And guys, this kind of came as a shock to a lot of people, but the Florida Panthers are getting ready to have Ekblad come back into their lineup, and they needed to make some room in the cap space department. So in order to make that happen, they had to send a player down on waivers, and that was Rūdolfs Balcers. Balcers, yeah, correct. Thank you, Matt. And he was claimed by the Tampa Bay Lightning. So the Lightning picking up a new forward. And guys, I'll tell you what, from what I've been able to see and check out, he seems pretty decent. Some of the advanced statistics that were put out there by that community, like JFresh, showed him having I think he had a 68% WAR rating, which for those who don't know what that is, it's win above replacements. And it, kind of tries to give you a good idea of how much value the player adds to the team. But the stats look pretty good for this kid. He's only 25 years old, kind of a third liner type of role. And I'm really excited about this pickup for the Lightning, but I want to get your guys' thoughts on it as well. Joe, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with him until just starting to look at some of his details now. Looks like last season he ended up being in 61 games played with a total of 23 points on the Sharks. Looking at a guy like that, he's going to be fitting into obviously one of our bottom 6 lines, hopefully our 4th line. And it could be somebody that maybe just gives the team a little bit of a bump where we've been really struggling.
I like this signing. Or claim. When I watched a little bit of Balcers in San Jose and a little bit in Ottawa, and it wasn't anything spectacular or special. He's a waiver wire pickup. It's seldom that those are extreme game-changing pickups. But when I saw him in the preseason with the Panthers and the one regular season game we played against the Panthers, he was looking pretty dangerous. I'm not sure who he was playing with. I know the Panthers really play a run-and-gun style, but he was one of the players that ended up scoring on Andrei Vasilevsky. Granted, the puck hopped right down to his feet and just potted it behind him. But I like what I've seen from him so far. I wonder where he's going to slot in, or if he even does, if it's just an AHL move or something. I know he doesn't make a whole lot of money. I think he's, just above 800,000, but I like this pickup. I dare say I'm excited to see some games with the Lightning, but I think he could provide a pretty decent bit of energy and scoring touch to our bottom 6, which desperately needs it.
Hey, if he can put up 23 points like he did with the Sharks last season as a third, maybe fourth liner, No complaints from me there. That's pretty good. He's done all right with the Panthers as well so far this season. He had 2 goals, 2 assists for 4 points in 14 games played. Nothing crazy, but again, when you're not playing first line minutes, you're not going to have, crazy amounts of goals and points all the time. So from the stats that we've seen and the little that we know about him, he seemed like a pretty decent player as well. So I'm excited to see how he does. And Matt, you were mentioning where he's going to slot in. I think it's got to be in Cole Koepke's spot. I know some people were talking about maybe taking out someone on the 4th line, like Maroon or Bellemare, who's kind of struggled this season. I don't think that happens. I think most of those guys kind of have their spot locked in on the roster. The only forward I could see them changing out for is Koepke. You could technically put him in a defensive spot. I don't think you would ever do that because I think that would not go very well. But Koepke is my guess is that spot where they tend to rotate it now anyway, that I think we could see him play. But Joe, I know you were talking about this. You haven't been super happy with the 4th line's performance and think he could be a help there.
I mean, that's where I'd like to see some changes anyway. When you look at how poorly, I'm going to single out one person in particular, and that's been Bellemare. His season, I brought it up a little bit last week, but it hasn't really improved. Last week he was -5 on the season. He's still -5 with 1 assist. His PK's been sloppy, and I mean, he's had some effort there, but he's making mistakes with clearing the puck. Perry's -6 on the season. Maroon's -4. With those sort of numbers, I mean, you really need these guys to grind down the opposition with cycling, buy some offensive zone time while you're not necessarily generating scoring chances. You're there to wear out the opposition. Making a change like this and throwing him in with, that sort of a role-playing position might be what is needed in order to get some more productivity out of our 4th line.
I tell you what, I think I agree with you, Joe. I love Bellemare to death. I'm a big player fan, as you guys all know. But this time I'll stick with my own team raving about a player. Bellemare, he's just a salt-of-the-earth guy. I love him to death. But, yeah, his play has been, a touch over dismal this season. So he needs to step it up, and I really wouldn't mind seeing him, scratched for a couple of games, get Balcers in, or maybe even Fortier, but I think Bellemare needs to sit down for a couple of games. Cole Koepke, despite, scoring his first goal yesterday, I've been rather impressed with it in a weird way. I think he would make a great 4th liner. I'm not sure what his hitting numbers are, but that guy lays some pretty big hits. He's not afraid to really use his body, and I think he could really, chime in as a 4th line kind of, dirty, grindy kind of player. Of course, he's not, Maroon or anything like that, but I think he could mesh well with them. So I think if Bellemare sits a game, having Koepke play with Maroon and maybe Perry and putting Balcers on the 3rd line possibly, I think that could be a pretty interesting switch up. Again, it's still so early in the season. It's completely on the table for it to happen. I hate saying that, we might have to scratch Bellemare because, again, he was fantastic last season. He was one of the best defensive forwards, in the division. I thought he was fantastic. The offense wasn't always there. He was so defensive minded that it took a toll to his offense. But this year, it's just neither. He's just kind of sloppy with just all of his plays. So hopefully Bellemare can turn it around. Maybe sitting down a couple of games might kind of kick him into shape. I know he's had a couple of tough shot blocks. He hasn't really looked like himself, and I think his age might be catching up with him, but I don't know. It's still so early in the season. I'd like to see the blender come out a little bit for the bottom 6.
And you were saying how, his productivity, Bellemare's, was last season. In that game against Edmonton, he had one of his first notable shifts in the 3rd period, but right after he was doing so well in the offensive zone, he took a critical tripping penalty and put them shorthanded.
Here's the thing for me. I haven't noticed it as much personally, and maybe that's because I'm half distracted half the time trying to write game recaps. But I haven't noticed it too much on my end, his stats definitely aren't good. Joe, you mentioned some of the, like -5, and that whole line's in the negatives as well. He only has 2 points so far. So he's definitely not been playing well, especially when you look at the stats. But here's my big thing. He's not getting scratched anytime soon, I don't think, unless he does something really boneheaded. John Cooper is just not the type of coach to do that. I mean, I think we've seen him do it twice in his entire career. I can recall. I remember he did bench, I think it was Kucherov for a game for the rest of the game when he made a big mistake during play. But I just don't see Kucherov making that kind of move. I could see him changing up the lines and mixing things up there, but I don't think he gets benched. And I think it's, Koepke, who they're still rotating those young guys in through there. I think he maybe gets in there and maybe plays some fourth line minutes, but I don't see Cooper benching any of those guys anytime soon.
And maybe it's a short-term thing where he gets placed back on waivers because we still have Cirelli coming back, which is going to bump someone else down in the line. And it might just be a what can you do for me now sort of player.
And I wouldn't put past scratching anybody. Braden Point got scratched. It was a couple of years ago, but he got healthy scratched for a game. Granted, he did was late to a practice or something, but
I think he was late to a team meeting. He overslept.
Yeah, something like that. So no, Belmar's not like that, but I wouldn't put it past him.
He's definitely done it before, but I just think it's unlikely. It's not a typical thing. It's not a John Cooper thing that you see a lot, but it'll be interesting to see. And Joe, I think you make a good point about, what can you do for me now kind of thing, because you are right. Cirelli is getting closer and closer to potentially coming back, but Goshen as well, although that's on the defensive side. So we'll have to wait and see, obviously, on how things play out and how these guys do in their first couple of games. But I wouldn't be surprised to see him in the lineup relatively soon, just so Lightning can kind of see what they have in him and how he plays there. But
good thing we don't have a logjam of a defenseman right now.
Right? No, I think it's actually a good thing for us, and I think it's going to make the trade deadline for the Lightning really, really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go into some of the game recaps here, though, that we had. Of course, we had 3 games take place since our last episode here. The first one being against the Edmonton Oilers. And the way I'm going to do this, guys, is I'm going to go through these games really quick, kind of get scores and some general stats, and then I'll get your thoughts on kind of the overall week and what you thought about it, and then we'll go into some details as we go throughout the rest of the show. But starting off with the first one, the Edmonton Oilers game, the Lightning unfortunately dropped that one by a final score of 3-2. Edmonton takes this one. It was a tight game in the first period, and in the second period things got a little bit ugly there. Connor McDavid, he gets himself a goal, and Leon Draisaitl, both those guys, man, they are just unbelievable players to watch. They are taking the NHL by storm every single year, and they are ultimately what helped get the Oilers past the Lightning, despite Killorn making it a 1-goal game in the third period. And then, of course, you have the Washington Capitals game, which took place in Washington, that quick 1-game road trip. And that one was an ugly one, with Washington taking it 5-1. So Lightning dropped 2 in a row there. Not something we've seen too much with the Lightning, especially in the month of November here, even though it's early. But it just a rough game. You had multiple players get injured. Sergachev went down with an injury. Cernak went down with an injury. And there was one other defender who I can't remember off the top of my head that went down with an injury as well. But multiple guys getting banged up there. Cowfoot, yes. And
after that dirty hit.
Of course, you had the suspension that took place. He did get suspended for that hit. There were tons of fights. Maroon got fined. Another Capitals player got fined. It was kind of just an ugly game, and the score showed it was ugly as well, with the Lightning dropping that one 5-1. But we ended things on a good note as the Lightning bounced back in a pretty big way against the Capitals back at home at Amalie Arena, and they defeat the Capitals 6-3 in that one. That one was a really interesting game, as it felt like a near perfect game in those first 2 periods, and then things got a little bit ugly in the third, where Washington was able to score some late goals. and make the score a little bit inflated, but the Lightning played really, really well in that bounce back game against Washington. So, Matt, I'll start with you here. Your overall thoughts on this week.
So obviously disappointed, only coming out with 2 points out of a possible 6. I didn't get much of a chance to watch the Edmonton game. I was out at dinner with my family. But I did manage to, I'm one of those guys where even though I'm with my family, I got the radio broadcast right there on low volume or something.
Yep.
And, I'm going back and forth on it. But I remember I turned it on and I heard he's bleeding everywhere. I turned it on literally as soon as Evander Kane got his wrist cut by Patty Maroon's skate, and I didn't know what was going on. I just heard he's bleeding. He's running back to the locker room or something like that. I'm like, oh God, red alert. And I texted you guys. I'm like, what just happened? I have no idea what just happened. So that was a scary situation in and of itself. You hate
Definitely
to see that.
One of the more brutal things to see on the ice. I think probably the most brutal seeing it be on the Tampa ice.
Oh yeah,
that has happened there. I mean, Maroon at least was a good guy in that, where he's knew something was wrong, immediately started, signaling for help.
Mm-hmm.
You'd never want to see something like that happen to a player, even though Evander Kane's one of the more controversial people in the game. You don't want to see an injury like that. And from what I understand, he's going to go through surgery and he will be all right.
Yeah, and that could be a not career ending, but career altering injury right there. I mean, that's your wrist. It was top side of it. I mean, I don't know a bunch about it, but he's going to be out for a minimum of 3 months, it said. I wouldn't be surprised if it was much longer or even, the entire season. You just hate to see that no matter who it is. I've got my opinion on Evander Kane, and you just hate to see that. And I saw a couple of people saying, oh, Maroon did it on purpose. No, you don't do that on purpose. That I know. It was only one of a million people saying that. So, or I saw 2 or 3 people saying that, but everybody was just like, no, you're out of your mind. So, yeah, just a scary situation in and of itself. I did manage to catch the last 7 or 8 minutes of the game, and from what I can tell from what you guys were saying, that seemed like their strongest part of the game. They're losing late in the game at home. They really kind of turned it on. We saw a lot last year. If they're losing late in the game, they're like, oh crap, we should probably try to win this one. And they had some really close chances. They ended up tying it up for a quick second, but the puck never crossed the blue line or the goal line there. So I don't know. Tough loss. What are you going to do? Edmonton's, they're firecracker team. It's definitely not the most disappointing loss for me this week.
I think this game really summarized what we were talking about last week quite a bit with the power play, and it just really highlighted our struggles with not only giving up shorthanded goals, but also giving up, not doing well on the penalty kill, with 2 power play goals given. The first, actually, if the Lightning would have declined their penalties that they received, their power plays, they actually could have likely won the game. One of the goals they gave up was a shorthanded goal. Another goal that was given up, Stamkos took a penalty on the power play. The resulting power play for Edmonton was one of their goals. Without those, the Lightning could have had a lead in the game. And one thing that you saw out of Edmonton was they played their power play a lot more gritty and a little bit less structured than the Lightning have been doing, and it worked. I mean, Connor McDavid scored his goal from almost the goal line. He was down near the paint in a tough area, and I really think that was just a continuation of what we saw last week from a pretty inept special teams effort from the Lightning.
And remember, they would have gone 3 for 3 on the power play if that one goal hadn't been called back because of the kicking motion. So it was a near perfect effort from Edmonton on the power play, and it was just a continuation of the disastrous special teams for the Lightning, especially in Edmonton, and again in Washington too. It wasn't great either. It's been a major issue for the Lightning all season long. Luckily, things started to get a little bit better, which I do want to get into more detail here in just a second. But you're absolutely right. Special teams was a major issue in that game, and they could have easily won against Edmonton, who is a very good hockey team, but they kind of shot themselves in the foot on that one.
Yeah, and unlike somebody predicted, Connor McDavid did have a goal. Gotta call Jake out for his bold prediction that he would go without scoring.
Listen, they're called bold for a reason, right? It was definitely a bold prediction, and yeah, as soon as he scored that goal, I went, "Oh boy, the guys are going to give me a tough time next week." And that was a rough one, but hey, maybe we only limit him to one goal, so maybe there's a win there.
You want to rub salt in the wound for Jake? If Connor McDavid wouldn't have scored that goal, Jake probably would have beat me in fantasy too.
Oh, jeez. Come on, man.
I'm just going to kick you while you're down.
Oh boy, yeah, it was a bold prediction. It didn't go my way and hurt me in multiple ways, but it is what it is. The Lightning ended up rebounding later on in the week, so I have no complaints. We were kind of mentioning the power play there, so let's stick with that there, and I want to go more detail into this. So obviously we mentioned not good against Edmonton, sorry, and then Washington power play was 0 for 3. The penalty kill was good on that one. They went 6 for 6, but after that Washington game, the Lightning decided to go ahead and make some changes there, and we saw the Lightning go 2 for 4 against Washington the second time. And even though they were 2 for 4, one of those was a double minor. So it's where you have that, technically it was one long power play, but it's taken as 2 of them because it's a double minor. But they had a lot of good chances on that double minor power play. And I really like the personnel change that we saw. Hagel has moved up to that first line power play, which you guys know I have been on that train all season long, calling for it in almost every single episode, it feels like. And then Sergachev moved up to the first power play as well, with Hedman going down to the second. And then I believe it was Killorn who also went down to the second to take Hagel's spot on that second power play. And I'll get your guys' thoughts on this as well, but I thought it worked. I really liked, now it's only been like one game, so we still have to wait and see how in a couple more games, but from what I saw against Washington, they were generating chances. They were still doing a lot of what they normally do, but they were getting good quality shots off. Hagel was playing really well with those star talent guys and being able to get into a good position to try and deflect those pucks, and they did score twice on the power play as well.
I'm not completely sold on Sergachev on power play 1. Again, I'm Victor Hedman's biggest fan, so I am getting a little bit concerned with Victor Hedman, just the slightest bit. He really doesn't seem like himself, so I think it's a justified move, but I'm not completely sold on it. And despite the fact that it worked tremendously in the second game against Washington, I don't know. Again, it's just something with me. I love Victor Hedman more than life itself, and I think he owns that spot on power play 1, despite the fact that it worked, again, tremendously. I mean, Mikhail Sergachev had 4 points in the first period, and 2 of them coming on the power play goals. I like the switch up. I like seeing Hagel on the first line. What I really hoped they would have done on the double minor power play against that, it was a Ovi high sticking Stamkos. What I wish they would have done is, because it was a 4-minute power play, they're changing pretty quick. Get some shots, or get in the zone and change within 45 seconds. They're not gonna stay out there too terribly long. Second unit comes on, they were out there real quick, probably like a 30-second shift or something, then rotate the power play 1 back on. But I really would have hoped that Victor Hedman would have stayed on that first power play unit. That's just me. Again, they did get some good chances in that 4-minute power play, but alas, it didn't really amount to anything. But that's just the one critique, I'd say. I know I have no right to talk about critiquing. I'm not at all a hockey coach, especially a power play coach or anything like that, but that's just one thing I wish I would have saw. But regardless, I'm seeing some improvements on the power play, and again, it really did work tenfold last night, but I'm not at all going to put a lot of stock in just one good game. So I hope they can really keep it up. I don't know if people are still asking for Jeff Halpern's head on a stake or anything like that, but again, I like the result last night, but I'm not at all going to, rely on, oh, they've improved, they're improving, but I'm still not completely sold.
Well, just changing the personnel that are on the line has changed the dynamic quite a bit in terms of what they're trying to achieve on the power play. I was calling for it last week, and I think I was pretty vocal. They need to get pucks to the net. I hate it when fans yell shoot, but they need to shoot more, go for the tip, screen, rebound. And that's exactly the mentality that you get when you have Sergachev back there as another shooting threat. Hedman is very, very, very talented. One of his best qualities is his pass, especially look-off passing, where he can find Stamkos for his beautiful one-timers. I'd definitely say that Sergachev does not have that passing touch to Stamkos with the same amount of quality that Hedman can deliver, but he can shoot the puck and is willing to shoot the puck from more spots, which makes him more of a threat from the defensemen that are trying to prevent those scoring chances. And then you add in there Hagel that's going into dirty areas and winning 50-50 pucks to extend the play. You've got more shots and you've got grittier play down low. And that's what has resulted in a transformation of the power play for PP1. Now, with Hedman being such a good player, putting him on the second power play allows that one to be more efficient and effective as well. We haven't seen it yet, but it's something to look forward to, having two productive power play lines.
That is a good way of putting it. But again, just something feels so weird to me about seeing Mikhail Sergachev have 3 minutes more ice time than Victor Hedman. It just seems so taboo to me. But that's just a personal issue with me. Again, I know nothing. The coaches know best.
Well, maybe Hedman's also still has a little bit of a nagging issue. He missed a couple of games last week, and that's when Sergachev kind of took over the majority of the responsibility. And it's allowing Sergachev to shine right now, and maybe those roles will get flipped back if Hedman's back at 100% and producing.
Or, you know what, even if Sergachev keeps up this pace, then, why switch it? If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Again, it's simply a personal issue with me. So, again, we've seen the results so far. But, again, that injury, you bringing that up with Hedman, that is a good point. So, if, Sergachev can keep up this pace, if they are seeing noticeable results, I'm fine with it. Again, I'm just, I'm saying it kind of tongue in cheek, like, why isn't Victor Hedman, on power play one? Again, I'm just kind of busting you.
Sergachev played really well, so I think he deserves a lot of credit on that power play one. And for me, I just like the idea of, not all of your talent is on one power play. You're able to mix it up really well, and Hedman brings a whole nother threat to that second unit. Because a lot of the times I felt like it was, once that first power play unit came off, it was kind of like, all right, maybe they can get something going, but who knows? It was mostly always that first power play unit that made a huge difference. But I think with Hedman on the second unit, it kind of gives them a little bit more of a threat. But you are right, Matt. It has been only one game, so you don't want to jump to conclusions just quite yet. But at least for me, from what I've seen early on here, I like what I've seen, and I hope that continues here for the Lightning in these next couple of games.
And you did bring up something that I didn't even really consider, is don't overload your talent on, one unit there, because, taking Victor Hedman off and also, replacing him with Sergachev and then bringing Brandon Hagel onto the first power play as well. That's your entire first line with, an addition of Steven Stamkos. Those are your big guns right there. So it is a good, transitioning of the weight there and of the talent, I suppose. So, because, Brandon Hagel, he's really is climbing his way up the ranks of being a top line player on this team. He technically is, but again, don't overload it, but also stay, healthy, in the middle, stay consistent, stay balanced, I suppose.
And when you look at the second power play line, you've got Nemesnikov, who really hasn't done too much yet this season, but he's got a tremendous amount of talent. Maybe if you put better players around him for that power play, such as Hedman, it's a different, he's not going to do very well in that position down at the goal line. We all know that Kucherov owns the right circle. Of course, Stamkos owns the left circle, and you can put anyone else in the bumper besides Point. So what's Nemesnikov stuck with if he's on the first power play line is just basically retrieving pucks behind the net and trying to feed them back up the boards. If you allow him to remain on power play 2 and give him a more dynamic role, he can use his hands, and maybe Hedman keeps things more calm. And we might be seeing some productivity out of that line, and specifically Nemesnikov. And in fact, I'll put myself out there this week. I think that we'll have at least a power play point out of Nemesnikov in the next 4 games before our next podcast.
Bold.
I'm going to hold you to it because you held me to it as well. But you know what? You know what you guys can overload on? Merch from shop.rblrsports.com. Make sure you guys head over there to check out some of the awesome Lightning merch that we have set up. And it's not just Lightning shirts. We got Bucks, Rays, Rowdies, all of that cool stuff. You can also use code BOLTS for 10% off your order. Definitely head over there to shop.rblrsports.com. Of course, those links will be in the description as well. So you can go and head over there to check out that merch. So
what a transition. That reminds me of Marty St. Louis when he gets the puck turned over.
I saw Jake just shaking, ready to do it. He was jumping at the bit.
I had it ready. I'm like, oh, this is a good one. I got to get that
Perfect.
in there. Let's go into the 3 stars now of the week. I think we got 3 good ones for you this week. I'll read them off to you, and then I'll let you guys jump in and go into each of the players. But for the number 1 star selected here by the RBLR crew, we have Brandon Hagel. He's been fantastic this week, playing really hard. Hasn't been too much on the score sheet, but he is just one of those players that you're always calling his name. He's always working in the dirty areas and creating plays that then create opportunities for other guys. The second star, we have Mikhail Sergachev, who we kind of just talked about a little bit, who was fantastic, especially on the power play with those 4 points in 1 period, by the way. And then the third star is the one and only Nick Perbix, where defending is just a pleasure. And he's continued to show that here in night out. He has been one of the rising stars for the Lightning. That, every year the Lightning have one guy that steps up really big. The one year it was Ross Colton. This year it's been Nick Perbix. It's one of the reasons why the Lightning can always seem to be one of the most competitive teams in the NHL. But your 3 stars for us by RBLR, Brandon Hagel, Mikhail Sergachev, and Nick Perbix. And don't forget to let us know what you guys think. We'd love to hear what you have to say as well. If you think there should have been somebody else on this list, or if you would have changed the order, give us a follow at RBLR Sports on Twitter and let us know what you think of the three stars. And not just Twitter as well, on Instagram, all the good social media platforms. But what are your guys' thoughts on these players, and what did you like specifically from them to put them on this list?
Well, I'll go first here with Perbix. He continues to score, continues to be calm with the puck and without the puck defending players. He's by far the biggest surprise of the season, in my opinion, and he's not going anywhere unless he gets injured, which we obviously pray that doesn't happen, because he's doing his part to be a top 4 defenseman. And, he scored a goal that was a fortunate deflection. It hit off one of the defending player's skates. But was it, you're saying before, 100% of the shots that you don't take don't go in? He's putting smart pucks on the net, and, good things are happening. So he's playing really well, and I love seeing it.
The Wayne Gretzky quote.
To me, it's they don't ask how, they ask how many. And Nick Perbix, man, he is climbing up the ranks. You guys heard me 3 weeks ago when he barely played a handful of games, and I was like, this kid could be something. And every time, every game, he's doing something that just makes me love him more and more and more. When he scored last night, and even just when the PA announcer, it wasn't Paul Porter. I don't know why both games I've been to this year, Paul Porter's not been there. Again, that's a personal issue for me. But hearing his name on the speaker there, I was the loudest person in there cheering for him. Nobody else, there's a lot of fair weather fans in there or anything, no shame or anything like that. But to me, when Nick Perbix scored, I was ecstatic. I was jumping up out of my chair, screaming, and everybody's kind of looking at me like, damn, man, it's not like Stamkos or anything. It was kind of a weird goal that went in, and I'm just ecstatic and screaming. So he just completely has won me over, and he just keeps getting better and better and better. There's still issues in his game. Do not get me wrong. He's not perfect by any means, but again, just the calmness, the comfortability of him out there. He's excelling at a rate, kind of unexpectedly. He was literally just, a fill-in for an open defensive spot. So he's been such a revelation for us. I cannot say enough. You've heard me say enough about him, so I'll leave it at that.
Sounds like there's a number 48 jersey in your future.
I'm not that rich.
People have been calling for him to be the next captain of the Lightning. That's how much people are loving Nick Perbix right now.
Excuse me?
Well, I know, not on. Listen, Stamkos is our guy. He's our captain. He's one of the best captains in the NHL. I hope he doesn't go anywhere until he retires officially. But people have been joking around saying Nick Perbix should be the next captain of the Lightning. Which, by the way, if you guys didn't notice, in that game against Washington, Nikita Kucherov had A on his jersey, which, for the most part, I don't really mean anything. They tend to rotate those between some of the star guys or the leaders in the locker room. But it is actually the first time Nikita Kucherov has ever worn a letter, which is crazy to think for how big of a name he is and how long he has been with the Lightning. Technically, if you look at the NHL, stats department, he did they have him listed as wearing a letter one other time back in 2020, where he's listed as wearing the C. But going back and looking at Chris Cran, who covers the Lightning right now, he went back and looked at the highlights himself and noticed that Kucherov was not wearing the C. So I'm not sure where that stat came from, but for the first time, Kucherov wearing a letter last night in Washington, which I think is really good to see, because a lot of people think of Kucherov as this, hothead kind of guy, and he just gets really frustrated and angry when he's not playing well. But you know what? It shows he is still a big leader in that locker room. And how many times have we heard stories of Kucherov working with the other players? I did a big article on this a while back, and how Kucherov worked with Palat when he was with the Lightning on his game all the time. And clearly it paid off, as Palat got a big pay raise this offseason. I think they were just talking that he was working with, I think it might have been Sergachev, working on those power play passes. So he is clearly a leader on that team. Good for him getting to wear the A there in the game last night.
So before we transition off, Sergachev being the second star, I want to talk, even though one of you guys mentioned it earlier, he had 4 points in that first period on Sunday night, which ties an NHL record for most points scored in one period by a defenseman. And that's a big reason why he's going to be the second star for us this week, because not only did he have a lot of good offensive output, but he helped a very, very, very struggling special teams hopefully permanently take a turn for the better.
Let's go into our game previews now as we get ready to look ahead at what's coming up this week. Of course, the Lightning have a couple of games tomorrow, one tomorrow night, and the Lightning will be taking on the Dallas Stars at 7 p.m. at Amalie Arena. And then the Lightning will finish off their homestand, this 3-game homestand, against the Calgary Flames on the 17th. That's a Thursday. Again, that game at 7 p.m. And then on Saturday, we've got the Nashville Predators. This game, of course, being played in Nashville. That one taking place at 8 p.m. Eastern. And then one more game before we come back for our next show. It is the Boston Bruins here at Amalie Arena at 7 p.m. Eastern. Guys, I don't know about you, but that's one I have circled on the calendar. Boston is off to an unbelievable start this year right now. I am very interested to see how that plays out with the Lightning taking on the Boston Bruins. That's always usually a fun game and a back and forth. But guys, any games you're circling on this week's calendar?
It's always fun to replay Dallas. They're off to a great start as well. They've really found something there with the new head coach, Peter DeBoer. It's always a fun rematch when you've played somebody in the playoffs, especially the finals. So I think that'll be a good test. I'm not sure if Jake Ottinger's back in net. I know he had an injury a couple of weeks ago, but it's always a fun game. But yes, especially Boston. That game, they're never not entertaining. I'm really excited for that one, especially off to the hot start that they're having. But I've got full faith that the Lightning are going to be able to neutralize them and maybe hand them one of their few L's on the season. I'm not going to get overzealous, overconfident here, but I think the Lightning are kind of starting to pick up steam. Yeah, we'll have a couple, duds here and there. I'm not expecting a huge win or anything like that, but that's a game you should have circled. It's never not entertaining against Boston.
Yeah, I completely agree. Boston's going to be a pretty good litmus test to see how an elite team is handled by the Bolts. You mentioned might hand them one of their few losses on the season. It literally will be a few. It'll be 3 if the Bolts win. They've only lost 2 games this season, which is off to an amazing start. They're 14-2. This is a completely revitalized team. They got Marchand back, and I can't stand the guy, but man, is he not playing some fabulous hockey right now. This is the team that really, I think, can help the Lightning build a ton of confidence if they take home the victory.
It's always an entertaining game, and I'm definitely looking forward to it. The Lightning have been playing pretty well here in the month of November. We talked about, when we first got into this month, if the Lightning can win majority of their games at home, it'll be a successful month. And so far, they've done that for the most part. They've had 2 losses on home ice, the one to Edmonton and then the one to Washington, to Carolina, but they did get a point in that one as well. So pretty good start for the Lightning here in the month of November. They've been playing really well at home, and they do play Boston again in November on the 29th, but that one will take place in Boston as well. By the way, guys, who's pretty good against the Boston Bruins usually is Brandon Hagel. He's actually had some success against them. I remember when he first came over, he had scored multiple goals, or he had a couple of points as well against the Bruins. So it'll be interesting to see if he can make an impact there, as he was our first star of the week this week. So we'll see if he can continue this great play into this next week as well.
I think Brandon Hagel, again, I sound like a broken record, but he's just getting better and better and better, especially gelling with that top line. And I was talking to Joe. We met up at the game last night against Washington, and he made a great point, just saying that Brandon Hagel, he's doing the dirty work for the big guns, for Braden Point and Nikita Kucherov. And I thought last night was probably his best game of the season so far. He was everywhere. He was a hound along the boards, along the half wall. He was working it, keeping pucks in, getting it to Point and Cooch, even at even strength. He was tremendous. And unfortunately, he had a goal taken back, given to Cole Koepke for his first goal of the season. So I'll give that one a pass. Good for Koepke, but he was a hound last game. I cannot say enough good things about him, and he is just excelling. Again, he's not putting up 3 points a night like Cooch right now, but again, just on a steady curve like that, he's winning me over as well.
Yeah, and the stats don't always tell you the whole story. Like you said, he scored that goal that ended up getting called back. It was a full 30 seconds after Koepke scored, which was a completely different rush. It wasn't like it was an offsides play that ended up giving them an advantage. And then he also didn't get credit for an assist, but he was critical in winning a 50-50 puck that Sergachev got the second goal of the night on the power play. He ended up keeping that puck in play and then drove to the front of the net where he was part of this. He screened the goalie in order for Sergachev to score that second goal, but that doesn't show up on the stat sheet. Hagel, visually seeing him, is definitely playing extremely well, and obviously a great reason why he's the number 1 star.
Hey, I said he was going to score 30 goals this season. He's already got 5, well on his way to hitting that mark there. And hopefully that success can continue against Boston, and which should be a huge game to watch. One last thing I want to mention here as well. Steven Stamkos is at 499 career assists. He is 1 more away from joining the 500 club. Stamkos has been, such a huge part of this franchise. In fact, he's at 488 goals, 187 points So at some point this season, he will more than likely hit 500 goals, 500 assists, and 1,000 points. So some big milestones coming up here for Steven Stamkos. Let's do this for a little bit of fun here, and then we'll talk about it in next week's episode. Guys, give me your prediction on when Stamkos hits the 500 assists. Does he get it this week? Are we going to be talking about it next time on next week's episode? Joe, I'll start with you.
What's funny is looking at the stats before we went live here. Stamkos hasn't scored a goal since he had those original 7. And not to say that he's not getting assists, but his productivity has started to go down a bit. With the change in the power play setup, I think it's inevitable that he'll have that assist this week. I think the bigger question is going to end up being, when's he going to finally get that 500th goal? He definitely is going to get it before he plays his 1,000th game. So he'll hit 500 and 500 before then, better than point per game. But, how long will that end up taking?
I don't think it'll take too much longer. I think he's going to get on a hot streak here once again. He'll start climbing. I think he gets the assist in the next game against Dallas. I could definitely see it happening, especially with the way the power play's been playing. If that continues, I see Stamkos getting his 500th assist against Dallas on the power play with a nice pass across the middle to Nikita Kucherov. So there's my prediction for Stamkos' 500 assists. Matt, what about you?
I'm going to turn the clock back a little bit. He's not getting that assist against Dallas, but he will score a goal against Dallas. I'm going to go ahead and assume that it's going to be a low-scoring game. That's just kind of how Dallas plays. They haven't lost, who they are. They do have an identity. They're a defensive-minded team that plays slow. But I think Stamkos, he's going to score a mirror image goal, kind of like the golden goal for the Lightning in 2020. The one shift, one shot, one goal. That's just my little playful prediction right there. He'll get the assist against Calgary.
All right. I like it. Well, we'll have to reconvene here next week and we'll see who hit it on the nose. But guys, anything else you want to throw in here before we say goodbye?
And just for you guys to have a great week. There's going to be 4 games played, so we'll have a ton of content before coming back for the next show.
You absolutely know. And make sure to follow us at RBLR Sports on the social media platform so you don't miss out on future episodes, and check out the other episodes as well for the Bucks, the Rays, the Rowdies podcast. Those guys do a fantastic job over there as well, so be sure to check them out. And if you guys could do us a huge favor, give us the like, hit the subscribe button, that 5-star rating, whatever it is on the social media platform that you are listening to. We really appreciate it. It really helps us out. So thank you guys so much for tuning in, and we will see you guys next week. Go Bolts!
Thank you for tuning into this presentation by RBLR Sports. On your way out of the stadium, please remember to like and subscribe.